Good morning, church. It is fantastic to be here. I give you very warm greetings from the church in Tucson. I think it's what? I don't know, 87 degrees there right now. So literally warm greetings. I'm really excited to be here, obviously with my husband, Rob, and I am going to share with you how I became a Christian. And what's really amazing, and thank you, Tucker, for your testimony, Tucker and I share the same spiritual birthday. Isn't that crazy? So December 5th, 2024, I celebrated my 40th spiritual birthday. Now, you know, back then, we were baptizing 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds. I'm just kidding. You're all like, what? No, I'm just kidding. It's a long time ago, 1984. So I'm not going to have you raise your hands if you were alive then. That's okay. So 40 years as a disciple. But the cool thing is, I'm from Boston. Okay, so I was born in St. Elizabeth's Hospital, like right down the street. And I was born there, and my family, we lived here until 3rd grade, and I have to say that I definitely am one of the most unlikely people to become a Christian. I really am. I did not grow up in a religious home at all. And my father was a stockbroker. He had a dream of working on Wall Street. So in 3rd grade, our family moved to New Jersey, right outside of Manhattan. And that's really where I grew up. But, you know, outwardly, if you looked at our family, you know, we had the right cars, we had the right house, belonged to the right country club, you know, the right clothes, all that. But inside our family, there was so much dysfunction, alcohol abuse, unfaithfulness with my mom and dad. There's just so much going on. And my dad meant well, but he was a very controlling father. You know, I can remember when I was 8 years old, he told me, you need to learn to play chess. And so I'm going to take you to chess lessons. And I was the only girl in the class. It was miserable. But that was kind of the way my dad was. He said, A's are acceptable in school, B's are bad. And so there was just a lot of pressure to perform, to just look a certain way. And so when I got into high school, I just was so angry, so bitter inside, that I wanted to do everything in my power to go the complete opposite direction of my upbringing. And so as much as my dad valued those grades and all those successful things, I stopped going to school a lot of the time. And I would hang out with the older kids that didn't care about school. I started drinking during school. I started doing drugs. I went down a very, very dark path. I honestly became a nightmare for my parents. They didn't know how to control me. They'd ground me, and as soon as they went upstairs, I was just out the door. They just could not control me. And then the end of my junior year, I almost didn't pass my junior year of high school, my parents saw this character-building school on the Today Show, that it was in the backwoods of Maine. And they said, that's where you're going. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I went there kicking and screaming up in Bath, Maine. And, you know, it was a life-changing time. I do believe God used that because I was able to get away from my friends, change a lot of the outward things, but still the pride, the selfishness, the lust, that was definitely there. Then my senior year of high school, my parents got divorced, and I moved with my mom back to Boston. So that's why I like to say I was born in Boston and born again in Boston. So it's really definitely my home. But during that time, I already had done a postgraduate year at high school, and the college that I wanted to go to, Connecticut College, you know, our family finances had changed. We could no longer afford that. And so I was like, man, I got to start someplace. I'm already 2 years behind. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to start taking classes at UMass Boston. Right? Woo! UMass Boston. And so, but the thing was, because I was so upset and just angry and bitter about my situation, the first semester I went there, I didn't talk to one person. And if you know me, that's really hard to do. Like, that was tough. But I just was like, I'm going here, I'm gonna get straight A's, I'm transferring out. And what was amazing is it was such an awesome experience academically. Like, I didn't have any more than 25 students in my classes my freshman year. It was awesome. I was like, okay, I'm going to give this school a chance. But if I'm going to be a part of this school, I need to make friends. So I decided I'm going to find the people that I want to be friends with. And just so you know, at that time, half my hair was shaved, and I only wore black. Okay, and I was really politically active. I had just traveled to the former Soviet Union to study communism. I was a huge fan of the Black Panthers, you know, so I definitely, okay, all right. Okay, I definitely was not wearing a sign, invite me to church, right? There's no way. I just would have thought, are you kidding? Do I look like I need help? No. So that's where I was in my life. I was not thinking about church or anything. So what was so interesting is the one woman that really stood out to me at the university. She was a work-study student in the honors English class. And I was the one that initiated with her, built a friendship with her. I thought, there's just something different about her. She's confident. She's got it together. We seemed to really kind of connect. And then we had lunch. And I'll never forget this. We had lunch, and she shared with me that she was a Christian. And literally inside, I was like, oh no, this is such a bummer. And I was very direct, and I told her, I said, listen, that's good for you. But me, okay, come on, do I look like I belong in something like that? And I mean, I was really rude, and I was direct, and it was so arrogant and so prideful. But I told her exactly where I was coming from. And I thought, oh, she's just going to write me off. She's not going to call me again. You know, we didn't have any texting or anything then, right? I think we had like the phones at home with the answering machines, maybe. I don't even know if we had that. So, but what was so impressive about this woman is she genuinely cared about me. She believed in me, she loved me, and she never let me go. Our relationship changed my life. And I found out she was the campus woman's leader. Okay, is that crazy or what? Out of all the people at UMass, that was the person I said, I want to be your friend. And, you know, so we kept being friends, and then I started feeling like kind of curious why she spent so much time at church, because she could have done so many other cool things with her life, and it really started to bug me. And so one day, I don't know what possessed me. I went up to her in her work and said, hey, I'm going to come to church with you this Sunday. She's like, great. So I went that Sunday, and guess what? It was at the Boston Garden. It was the Sunday of the evangelism seminar, the first Sunday that I went to church. And I'll never forget it, because I walked in and I went, oh gosh, I don't know what this is. This isn't church. Because everybody here wants to be here. People from all races, all ages. I was so moved just by that first Sunday. Now, I think they were a little bit afraid to ask me to study the Bible, honestly. And it really bugged me. I was like, how do they know I'm a visitor? You know what I mean? I was like, that really bugged me. But I did go back to church. And my relationship started to grow. And then, I don't know how they convinced me to go to a campus retreat. I really don't. I think maybe they paid for it or something, because I really don't know how I got there. But the great thing was, my campus minister at the time at UMass was Russ Ewell. Okay, so if you know Russ, okay, so he was preaching the main lesson at the campus retreat, why have you forsaken me? And that was it. That was it. I just thought, oh my gosh, I need to figure out who this Jesus is, what he means for me. And that was where my whole life changed. I started studying the Bible, falling in love with Jesus. The walls dropped. I'd never, been more open about my life with people I just knew for a couple months, but it was a life-changing time. And so after about 4 months of studying the Bible, that December 5th, 1984, I was baptized into Christ. So thank you. And I just want to say that in the next year, which was really cool, my mother and both my sisters got baptized in the church. My mom got remarried in the church, and she is still a faithful disciple living up in Peabody. She's been up there for 30 years. And so I'm so grateful for what God has done. And I just want to encourage you with one of my favorite scriptures that I've got to read before you get a chance to, this is the main show right here. Come on. Oh, you guys are in for a treat. Let me just tell you. Okay, Psalm 37 in verse 3. It says, keep trusting in the Lord and do what is right in his eyes. Fix your heart on the promises of God and you will be secure, feasting on his faithfulness. Make God the utmost delight and pleasure of your life, and he will provide for you what you desire the most. Give God the right to direct your life, and as you trust him along the way, you'll find he pulled it off perfectly. He'll appear as your righteousness, as sure as the dawning of a new day. He will manifest as your justice, as sure and strong as the noonday sun. Quiet your heart in his presence and pray. Keep hope alive as you long for God to come through for you. So thank you so much for listening, and it's just really, really awesome to be able to be together with you all this morning. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
That was awesome.
Go get it.
Okay, baby, let's go. I love backpacking in Arizona. Just last. Here's a recent trip we took on the Arizona Trail that runs from Mexico to the border of Utah. And there's Nick, and right there on the left. And that guy on the right, that's me. And then the second there to the right is a guy named Evan. And that was his first trip. I started backpacking about 10 years ago. And when I first went, I took a backpack 45 pounds. I mean, I had a hard time lifting it. I was like, finally got that thing on. Over time, I learned how to pick it up and carry it and lighten it up so it was a lot easier to carry. But when I invited this guy, his name's Evan Snow there in the orange reddish shirt there, to go backpacking this last fall for the first time, he showed up with a backpack, looked kind of like a Hello Kitty backpack. You ever seen those? You see them in the airports, you know, the kids carrying the little thing. I'm like, dude, that is not going to work. We're going on like a 15, 20-mile hike. That's not going to be enough to carry everything you have. And so he really didn't understand the concept of carrying a pack on your back when he heard the term backpack. And so we had to start from square one. And we had to scramble last minute. We got him a new backpack. And to go through everything you needed to do to get on the trail. And I think there can be that same type of confusion when it comes to following Jesus and carrying a cross. And so let's take a look in Mark chapter 8, verse 27, because Jesus breaks that concept down in this passage. We're going to go through the three basic necessities if you want to follow Jesus and carry your cross. Step one, answer the most important question. Who is Jesus to you? Who is Jesus to you? Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. On the way, he asked him, who do people say I am? They replied, well, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others one of the prophets. But what about you? He asked, who do you say I am? Peter answered, you are the Messiah. Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about this. So everything in Jesus' ministry up until this time led to this one question. All his miracles, all the feeding of the 5,000, the 4,000, all of those things, the conflicts with the Pharisees. This question was in the air. Who is this guy? Who is this? Who is he? What's going on? And finally, finally, Jesus puts it to his disciples, says, listen, who do you think I am? You have to answer that question. It's not enough just for Peter. He asks every person who gets into this vicinity, who do you say I am? Who do you think I am? Is he going to be a fairy tale to you? I lived 10 years in Japan. A lot of people thought Jesus was up there with Santa Claus. Just a fairy tale, a concept. For many, he's just a good teacher. He's an inspiration. Maybe some of you think, yeah, he really is the Son of God. Maybe some of you, you're coming in here and you're like, yeah, I've heard he's the Son of God, but it doesn't really mean that much to me. And you're trying to find out more. Most people stop right there. They feel like they've done their spiritual duty when they've answered that question correctly. They come here, yeah, Jesus is the Son of God. Evan was just like that when he wandered into our church last July. He was working in his business. He was working at a Home Depot, and he just typed in, church near me. Wanted some encouragement on a Wednesday night. And so he wandered into our fellowship, and I remember him being in the fellowship, just being out in the audience. He had this big smile, leaning forward. I go, that guy's open. He's definitely interested in what I'm talking about here, about Jesus. He wanted to get closer to God. He believed Jesus was the Son of God, but that was about it. He wanted to make a connection with people, and maybe that's exactly how you got here. Maybe you just found Back Bay Church or Boston Church online, and you just wandered in here. Maybe this is your first time. And I go, that's awesome. Great first step. For Evan, he came from a rough background. He was 24, recently divorced at 24. Small business owner. He did installs for TVs and home repair. And so my son talked to him in the fellowship, and he just like poured out his life in like 5 minutes during the fellowship. Just like, boom, here's my whole life. And so my son, James, sitting right over here, invited him to the singles retreat last summer in Anaheim, California. And so James was driving, but Evan also volunteered to drive. And so here's a picture of them heading from Tucson, Arizona to San Diego. It's about a 7-hour drive. Okay, this is the beginning of the drive because they're all smiling. When they got to San Diego, the woman sitting in the back seat on the left-hand side told James, who was driving the other car, she said, James, how much room do you have in your car going back? He's like, what do you mean? He goes, I can't go with Evan. He said, what do you mean? Well, he drove about 95 coming here, rear-ending people, and then actually his bumper nearly fell off because someone honked. And he said, oh, no problem. So he pulled over his car. His bumper was hanging off, and he had pulled out his zip strips, and he tied his bumper back. He goes, no problem, we're good, and then just hit 95 again. The people in the car, after this picture was taken, were gripping the handles the whole way, completely terrified. Evan was having a great time. And when he went to the retreat, he was like, yes, this is inspiring. His eyes were open. He's like, yes, this is what I've been looking for. If you can answer who Jesus is to you, with Jesus being the Son of God, you're off to a great start. That's a great foundation. But there's more to it. And I think this is the problem in America today, is that we think, hey, I believe Jesus is the Son of God, I'm good to go. I'm going to heaven, I'm fine, that's all I need to know. But you're probably here because you feel like, is that really all there is? Because there's a whole bunch of gaps in my life that are not getting filled. And so the second step is you got to face your misconceptions. Answer the right question, but then face your misconceptions. Let's keep reading. You guys ready? Let's keep reading in verse 31. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and in 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. Get behind me, Satan. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. Once Peter answered correctly, he was fired up. Jesus praised him. In the parallel passage, like, man, great answer. That's awesome. Fantastic. So Peter's, he's puffed up a little bit. He's like, yes, I answered correctly. Yes. And in the very next section, he gets called Satan. But once Peter answered correctly, the disciples' spiritual education really got started. This is where Jesus really launched into what it means to be a disciple. This is like passing the SAT or the GRE. I know we got a lot of smart people in this room. That's good. Good for you. But knowing Jesus' identity was simply the gateway to their true education, their graduate level learning about what it really means to follow Jesus. And Jesus built on that confession with hard teaching about suffering and cross-carrying. Once we have faith, Jesus will start to reveal his willingness to suffer for us, his love for us, his intensity, his passion. And Peter rebukes him for this. Why does he do that? Why would Peter rebuke Jesus? Well, he had misconceptions about the Messiah and what it meant to follow him. He thought the coming king, was going to follow the familiar path of greatness in history, the path of Alexander the Great, of King David, of military glory, power, and luxury. He knew that if Jesus suffered, he might have to suffer too. And so he said, hey, that's not, whoa, hang on, time out. I don't think we need to go there, Jesus. I don't think you've got the right script here. We have a lot of misconceptions about what it means to follow Jesus. I thought following Jesus was an adjustable dial. You could just set in a way that fits your own desires and lifestyle. I was a junior at UC Berkeley when God really called my name and just said, hey, dude, it's time for a change. I was in the dormitories, and God had placed a disciple, a real disciple, right next to me in the dorms. We were like adjacent dorm rooms. And he would invite me to Bible discussion. He was a super nice guy. He'd help me with my homework. He was smart. He was disciplined. He was organized. And I just figured, hey, we're both Christians, baby. He's just a more buttoned down type. I was the more fun-loving, free type of Christian. Just the, I'm going to enjoy life. We're both going to heaven, right? I was just going to have fun along the way. And I would borrow his Swiss Army knife on Fridays and Saturdays to open my alcohol, my beer, my wine bottles. He always gave me a smile, never said anything, just smiled. And I'd go to Bible discussion in church when I felt guilty enough. When the guilty just piled up for weeks and months, I better go to church and just kind of slough it off. Or Bible talk. I had a few misconceptions about what it really meant to follow Jesus. How about you? Some of us, we're looking for a comfortable Christianity. We want Jesus without any suffering. We want the promise of a pain-free life. Salvation without too much effort. Can I just say a little silent prayer, be saved, and just move on? Man, that's so tempting. Having a warm feeling in our heart. We want a little Jesus, don't we? Not too big, not too invasive, just a little one, little tiny guy. The idea of suffering doesn't seem to fit with a religion in America. My son James and I started studying the Bible with Evan after that retreat. He really got fired up. after he went to that retreat, and he made it back safely. And so we started doing Bible studies. There he is on the couch leaning back. And we explained what it really meant to follow Jesus, what it meant to carry a cross. And he had to face his misconceptions. It's more than just going to church. I mean, because he had been going to church once in a while. He went to church during his failed marriage. He was doing drugs at the same time. But he never thought, hey, what's wrong with this? This is just what it means to be a Christian in America. And we started to piece together, like, that's what you think. Those are the concerns of people, but here's the concerns of God. We talked about how it's more than just simply being a good person. If I asked you to raise your hand if you're a good person, I bet we'd have 97% of people say, I'm a good person. Your mom told you you're a good person. And it's hard to let that thought go. But it's demanding to follow Jesus. It's all consuming. Jesus, though, doesn't stop with just sharing about his cross. He calls each one of us to get involved. He really does. So you got to choose your cross. Let's keep reading here in this passage. Then he called the crowd to him, along with his disciples, and said, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. Jesus just doesn't stop with his own level of sacrifice. We know Jesus died on the cross. We go, that's awesome. That's amazing. But he turns to the crowd, to his disciples, and then to the crowd following. He's got lots of people around him. And he basically says to them and to us today, no cross, no Christianity. No cross, no Christ. You have to make a choice. You'll have to pick up your cross, or Jesus doesn't consider you a disciple or true Christian. Now, this is not commonly found. We try to package Christianity as ministers in as palatable way as possible to bring as many people into the kingdom. And as people, we want to make that path as smooth and as easy. We've got QR codes to get you pulled in. We just make it so easy to become a Christian. But there's a cross. There's a huge level of sacrifice if you really want to follow Jesus. What does that mean to carry your cross? It starts with denying self, saying no to what you're currently doing. Man, I had so much to get rid of. I mean, I started studying out about my sin, my lust, pornography, my drinking. I went back to my dorm room. I was throwing out stuff. I was throwing out all my bottles. I wasn't 21 yet. I mean, the last thing that was really tough to give up was my fake ID. I had taken my best friend's birth certificate, gone into the DMV, and forged my fake ID so it looked really official. It's probably a felony, Tucker. But it was tough to give. It was one of those things where it wasn't just like, oh, get rid of it. And I remember talking to Kurt, the guy next door to me, and I said, hey, Kurt, I'm getting rid of all this stuff. I really want to change it. What about this? Do you think I need to give this away? He just stared at me. I'm like, okay, yeah, I probably do need to give that up. But I had to change. There was so much I needed to get rid of. Just the immoral relationships with my girlfriends. I was just like, that's got to go. I got to say no to it for the first time. And then Jesus talks about if anyone's ashamed of me, what else? What keeps us from carrying the cross? You got to sign up for Team Jesus. You got to identify, you got to put on the Team Jesus jersey. And I did not want to do that because all my images of Christians was like, you are the biggest nerd in history, dude. Jesus this, Bible that, thank you, Jesus, jumping Jehovah. I was like, no. I remember going to Bible study with the guys, and I said, listen, I don't mind doing a personal Bible study when it's personal and private. But when we're outside there, can we just not talk about what we talked about publicly? I didn't like the Bibles because they had the little tail sticking out of it, the paper Bibles. I'd have to tuck it in just so no one knew that was actually a Bible I was carrying. But listen, if you're ashamed of him, guess what? He's going to be ashamed of you. You better choose which team you want to be on. Jesus is saying if you want to follow him, you're going to have to put that sinful part of your life that you know about. You know exactly what I'm talking. Yes, I'm talking to you. I know. Some of you are thinking, he knows my life. Yes, I'm talking to you. You're going to have to put that to death. That's got to go on the cross. That's the only way that Jesus can really shine through you. Wasn't it inspiring to hear Tucker's testimony? Because when you hear the dark aspect of a person's life, you go, man, that person's really different. I'd never imagine that person being like that. But that's how Jesus can start living through you. Others can start to see Christ in you when you put those things to death and start carrying your cross. But we often want Christ, but we just don't want that cross. And that's human nature. That's absolutely human nature. We want an awesome marriage, but we don't want to sacrifice. We want to have an impact with our lives. We want to be significant, but we don't want to put effort into it. We want peace of mind. Our minds are just driving us crazy. But we want it without purity. We want growth without really trying. We want weight loss without restriction. And for the cheap price of $9.99 today, I'm going to offer you the Rob Skinner Diet Program. No, just kidding. Many people reject Christianity when Jesus hands them a cross to carry. This is just kind of basic. This is why more people are not Christians. Because they get into this section and they go, that's not me. I'm good. I'm good. But here's the dirty little secret. You ready for this? Here's the dirty little secret. You're gonna carry a cross of one type or another. That's the dirty little secret that people don't often let others know about. If you reject Jesus' cross, which many will, you're basically saying yes to the cross of emptiness. You're saying yes to the cross of meaninglessness. You're saying yes to the cross of the consequences of the sinful living that you're practicing right now. When you say no to Jesus' cross, you're saying yes to the cross of shame. Man, there was so much shame in my life. I didn't feel good. I just thought, Rob, you're not a good person. And I was tired of carrying that cross. I can't live this way. But Jesus' cross is actually relatively light. And he says that. Because I know some of you are thinking, man, I'd like to, but it sounds like a lot. All right, let's just talk this over, guys. Jesus' cross is actually light. He says that in Matthew chapter 11. Take a look what he says. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. What's Jesus saying? He's saying, listen, trust me. This yoke I'm asking you to carry is actually light. It's so much lighter than what the world offers. Now, when we talk about a yoke, there's different types of a yoke. You've got a yoke that will yoke different oxen, cows together to pull a plow. But there's actually human yokes, and commentators think that what Jesus is referring to is this type of a yoke. Okay, it's a human yoke basically used to carry heavy burdens. And he's saying, listen, we all are going to carry stuff. Carrying water, you had to carry water back then. We're going to carry burdens in our life. But he says, listen, when you carry my yoke, it's so much lighter. It's so much better. It's lighter than what the world is offering. This world's yoke is really heavy, and some of you are feeling it, and that's why you're here today. You came in, and you are burdened. You are worn down. There was a young woman raised in the church in Tucson. And she was a kingdom, we call them kingdom kids, raised in church. Maybe your parents were missionaries or ministers or whatever. And she just decided, I don't want the cross of Jesus. I am done. I'm going to live my own life. I want to live a free life. So she left Jesus. She left the church. And she just chose a life of sin. I mean, she went into an alternative lifestyle. She got heavy into alcohol. In a relationship with another woman, she just began drinking super heavy. By the age of 35, her liver gave out. 35. Now, to us who are a little older, 35 sounds really young. To some of you, goes, that's an old timer. But the cross she chose almost crushed her. I mean, she was like kind of dicey whether she was going to survive or not. But that's when she decided, I want to switch crosses. I want the cross of Jesus. So she studied the Bible with her parents who'd been praying for her like every day. And if you're a parent and you've got a kid who's wandering, you know what I'm talking about, right? Your kids help you in your prayer life, don't they? So they studied the Bible with her and her brother who was a disciple. And guess what? She repented. What was really awesome is that she just decided, I don't want my old lifestyle. I'm tired of it. It's literally killing me. And so she had a liver lined up, but she said, no, wait a second. I need to get baptized before I have that surgery. Because if I die on the operating table, I'm going to hell. So she passed on that one, and she got baptized. I think I've got a video here that Anthony put together for me. Here she is. Here's her parents baptizing her. She's so weak, she can barely stand up. She needs help. Okay, thank you. It was so awesome. Another girl in the church, that baptism was just in January or early February. But another girl in the church who was a kingdom kid, she chose to carry Jesus' cross 2 weeks later. And so I think we got a picture of this one, hopefully. Do we have that, Anthony? There we go. Okay, so she decided, I'm going to carry Jesus' cross a little bit earlier. This happened in mid-February. Okay, we don't have the slide, but you get the picture there. You should choose your cross carefully. Which cross are you going to carry? Many young people, which I'm talking to, many of you guys, you think you can run from the cross. You can leave Jesus. Oh, I left Jesus behind long ago. And you're only going to carry a heavier one. If you've ever seen The Hunchback of Notre Dame, there's a scene in there, and I don't know if we've got the slide here for it. No, okay. But this guy, he's in a cage, and he gets freed. And he's like, I'm free. And he trips and he falls into the stocks. And it's like, dang it. And that's how our lives are. We're like, oh, I left behind all that religion stuff. I'm just living my own life. Time passes, and you end up going, dang it, what did I do? This is not the marriage I wanted. This is not the family I wanted. This is not the lifestyle I envisioned when I thought I'm going to live a free life without the cross. Maybe that's why you're here today. We continued studying the Bible with Evan last fall, and he chose to combine his faith in Christ with carrying the cross of Christ. And he wanted to change, and he got baptized at a beautiful mountain pool. And he said, hey, I want to get baptized somewhere beautiful. And so there's my son baptizing him. It was awesome. It was last September. He said, I want to get baptized up at Seven Falls. We had to hike in 4 miles to the baptism. And 4 miles out, it was just awesome. And before and after the baptism, we just built a great friendship. I mean, just fell in love with this guy. He became roommates with my son, James. And I wish I could show a more recent photo of him, but he's dead. He came to church in July. He got baptized in September. We went backpacking in October. He died in November. 24 years old. Man, I'll never forget that morning, that Monday morning, right before Thanksgiving. And my son called. And if you're a parent, you know, if your kids call, there's sometimes they go, what's the matter? I was like, why are you calling me? Like, what's going on? And my son was crying and just sobbing. He's like, Dad, Evan's dead. I'm like, what? Evan's dead. So my wife and I, we jumped in the car. We drove over to James's house. And his household, there were disciples living there. It was like 4 of them. And they'd all gotten sick right before Thanksgiving. They'd caught some type of a cold or something. They were all kind of knocked out. But Evan really got sick. He had childhood diabetes on top of his illness. And so the night before, he was really having a tough time breathing. And they're like, hey, let's take you to urgent care or something. You don't sound very good. And he's like, oh, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. And that's the way Evan was. He had kind of like a fear of doctors. He's like, no, I got it, I'm fine. And James's roommate knocked on his door that morning and said, hey, I haven't heard from Evan this morning. And I knocked on his door and no response. So they checked the door, wouldn't open. They pushed the door open, and his body was slumped against the door. He caught a cold, and coupled with the diabetes, then he got pneumonia, and he didn't make it through the night. 2 days later, we had a memorial for Evan, and it was amazing. I mean, it's just totally awesome. It was a crowded room, something like this, and his family came. But his family, they thanked me so much, and their comments were very interesting because his dad said, thank you so much. Thank you so much for what you shared. Thank you for keeping Evan out of jail. You see, his life was so different. He was carrying a different cross just months before. His parents could not believe all the love that was being shared about Evan. All the memories from the retreat, all the backpacking trips, all the things, the joy that he brought in those 4 short months of being a disciple. Evan put down that cross of sin and shame, and he picked up Jesus' cross at just the right time. And you know what made it bearable? Just the thought, even though we were all crying, so sad, just thinking, he's in heaven. And if you're a Christian, you know I'm talking, this is what it's all about. This is exactly what I became a disciple to do, is help others to find Jesus. He's in heaven. And do we have the slide of his testimony?
Good afternoon.
This is right before he passed.
My name is Evan Snow. I'm originally from Illinois. I've been here for about 4 years. And I've got a couple businesses out here, small business owner, and also part of the singles ministry here. And just before we start, I'd like to really thank Jesus just for everything that he's done in my life. And, he's really the star of the show here. And, I really learned about Jesus through trust. And that was something that before I really found Jesus, I was trusting in the wrong things. I was trusting in the things of this world, of relationships that I had, of friendships that I had, trusting in myself, my own ideals that was a really low point for me in my life, and I felt really alone and abandoned. And I really just realized that the love of Christ is the love that I was seeking out, and that was what I should put my trust in, is a love that never fails and a love that is always there for me. And He was there for me in my lowest point. And I've never really had a religious background. I would consider myself like an atheist for most of my life. It was only up until a couple years ago that I even started to have questions about God and about faith. And through that, I was really just like a lukewarm Christian. Somebody who kind of just kind of believed in it but didn't follow any of the practices, didn't really put any of the things into play in my life. And that was like really clear through my friendships and through my relationships that had ended up failing because I put them above everything else and above Christ. And so I recently found the church online. I was just sitting in the Home Depot parking lot. It's like 5 minutes away, and was just looking for some church and some fellowship and looking to get closer to God. And thankfully, He brought me here, and I was able to start studying the Word and really seeing what Jesus talks about and what the Bible talks about as far as what a true disciple is, a real follower of Christ, and not somebody who's just, like I said, lukewarm and just kind of into it, but still sinning when I want to and it's convenient for me. And so I was baptized about a month ago.
Woo! That's good, Anthony. Thank you.
And after my baptism, and
before he died, he got involved in Bible studies, and he helped another person named Isidro get baptized. I think we've got a video of him getting baptized just a little over a month ago. Evan was in his Bible studies and helped him to make a decision to follow Christ. That's awesome. Another woman was inspired by Evan's transformation, and she became a Christian 2 Sundays ago. Her name was Amy.
Okay, Isa? Yeah. Okay. Una, dos, tres.
Amen. There we go. These people chose the cross of Jesus over the cross of sin and shame. And I just want to wrap this up by saying, if you want to follow Jesus truly, if you really want to be a Christian, if you're interested, if you came here today because you thought something's missing, step 1, answer the most important question. Who is Jesus to you? He needs to be the Son of God. You've got to have faith in him. Second step, sit down with somebody and face your misconceptions. I think one of the most important steps you're going to make if you're visiting here today, if you're a guest, is you got to make a connection. You got to talk to someone around you, and you can feel like, oh, I don't know anybody. Just don't leave. Stick around and talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm interested. I'd like to talk more about this. I'd like to study the Bible. Help me out. There's so many people that would love to help you. And finally, choose your cross. What's it going to be? Is it going to be the cross of Jesus, which is relatively light? Or is it going to be the cross of the world, which can lead to your destruction? When are you going to pick up Jesus' cross? You can reject Jesus' cross, but you're going to end up carrying one that's infinitely heavier. I want to urge you today, carry the cross of Christ. Thank you very much.